Hello, Divorce and Beyond family. I've got some exciting news because we have teamed up with Headspace to guide you toward better mental health. With Headspace's meditation, mindfulness tools, and mental health support, you're set for a journey to a happier, healthier you. And there's more because if you sign up through our exclusive link, you'll enjoy 2 weeks of Headspace membership for free. So don't miss out on this opportunity to embrace your well-being. You can check out the show notes for the link or just go to divorcebeyond.com/headspace-Susan, and you'll be able to start your path to peace and joy today. This is just one more way that we can support you on your journey to a better beyond.
Coming up on today's episode of the Divorce and Beyond podcast.
You want to understand those emotional undercurrents that are driving the disputes. It's not really about the dispute. It's about the emotional content underneath. And that's what can help you approach your negotiations with clearer perspectives, and that will help you to avoid unnecessary conflicts. Hello, and welcome to the Divorce and Beyond podcast. I'm Susan Guthrie, your host. As a top divorce attorney and family law mediator for 30 years, I know what you need to know to get through your divorce, and most importantly, how to move beyond it to thrive and transition to your new future. My experts and I are here to give you the insider view into the process, so listen in for the wisdom and expert information you need on your journey through divorce and beyond. Welcome to today's podcast. I'm Susan Guthrie, your host, and listeners, today we're going to have another Susan-only episode because you seem to like those. I have to say the last two that I have done have had about double the download. So I'm guessing that this is the type of information that is resonating with everyone right now. So for the time being, I'm going to alternate for a while between Susan-only episodes where I share some of my insights from my 35 plus years in this industry, along with having all of my wonderful expert guests on the alternate weeks when we're having episodes. So just wanted to give you a little update on that. Today, what I want to dive into is an episode I'm calling Divorce Wars, the craziest things couples have fought over. So I have to tell you, 35 years in, one of the things that I know is that people will draw a line in the sand over the most bizarre things when it comes to their divorce. Things that you can't believe that they are so important that they're going to spend the time, money, and effort to argue over them, or even, more bizarrely go to court over these things. But trust me, every divorce attorney out there that you know has a file full of these stories. I have an entire folder full of them. They are stories that either have happened in my career or stories that I hear from colleagues, because when these things happen, we share, we get together and we have those conversations of, hey, look, you think that one, is a little out there. Here's what my clients argued over in one of my cases. So I'm going to dive into these craziest things couples have fought over, some of those outrageous disputes that have gone inside courtrooms or just been the issue that people have spent a lot of time and energy over in their negotiations. Now, one of the reasons to talk about this is it can be very entertaining. Sometimes we just look at these stories. It's just like when we see the stories of celebrities and we read, People magazine stories of the divorce of the day. We're interested in what other people do. But the other reason I want to share this is because I want you to be thinking about and understanding why couples find themselves entangled in such what seem like petty battles. And more importantly, I want to share some insights on how you can avoid falling into similar traps during your own divorce proceedings. One thing that we all know, divorce is a very emotionally charged process. I have episode after episode about that particular topic. And what that does is it leads people to focus on seemingly trivial things that are a way for them to either exert control or power or to seek validation or justice. There's sort of a correlation between the two, and I'll talk about that a bit. So understanding these motivations when they're being experienced in your own divorce can help you in navigating the process more smoothly. You want to understand those emotional undercurrents that are driving the disputes. It's not really about the dispute. It's about the emotional content underneath. And that's what can help you approach your negotiations with clearer perspectives, and that will help you to avoid unnecessary conflicts. So I'm going to dive in. I have some crazy stories, things that people have argued over, spent time, money, and energy on in their own divorces. And then I'll get back to talking about what was driving this and how you can avoid this. Okay, so let's dive into the stories first. The first one is the dog's Halloween costume collection. Yes, in one case, a divorcing couple with no kids got into a heated legal dispute over their dog's elaborate wardrobe, which included over 20 custom Halloween costumes. The wife wanted to keep them all, claiming they were handmade by her. Well, the husband argued that Fido, we'll call him Fido, Fido liked his banana costume best, and the dog would be traumatized if the banana costume stayed behind. So these two were, she was saying, well, I created it, these costumes, therefore I should keep them. He was saying the dog should select, I think he's saying anyway, that the dog should select his favorites and they should go with the dog. But the lesson here, right, is pets are often emotional stand-ins for children. They are like children to many people or members of the family. People are extremely, extremely attached to their pets. And so their pets and their pets' belongings can become surprisingly symbolic. This couple, in fact, spent quite a lot of money over their dog's wardrobe, right? And I think a simple solution might have been the dog's wardrobe went with the dog if the dog was going back and forth, but who knows? All right. Next one. The couple fought over a Star Wars action figure. Yes, a Star Wars action figure. Just one. And its value was, for those of you who are out there, oh, well, those things can be worth a lot of money. Value was $10. Value was $10. So in this particular case, the husband swore it was the last one in the original set, whereas the wife felt it was a junk drawer toy. And neither of them would budge on their belief about this particular toy. So he wanted the value ascribed to it, and she said it wasn't worth anything. And they had 3 mediation sessions over this one issue and multiple attorney letters back and forth. And in the end, they agreed they were going to flip a coin. They did it on camera, so there could be no question, to decide who got to keep this particular thing. So in the end, it came down to a game of chance after they spent the money for 3 mediation sessions and multiple attorney letters. For those of you going through a divorce right now, you do the math on that. So here, the lesson is it's rarely actually about the object. In this case, it was maybe about control, about nostalgia, or perhaps just about the need to win, right? But the reality is they could not come up with a way to resolve this short of 3 mediation sessions and multiple attorney letters. All right, the next one. And this one isn't as crazy as some of the others, but I wanted to include it. It was a couple who had a lot of hundreds of thousands of airline miles. And in that particular case, one party wanted to split them down the middle And the other said, well, they aren't technically transferable. Now, there's ways, obviously, to deal with that. But that other party was saying, basically, I can't give you any of them. They belong to me. And since I can't transfer them, you can't get them. After weeks of arguments and hours on the phone with the airlines, they eventually included a clause for reimbursing any flights booked with miles used from that account. So the lesson here is miles are a marital asset. People will lawyer up and argue over them, and that's not necessarily wrong. But rather than turn it into a big battle, being practical about how you approach them is usually the best way to go. And if the parties are being cooperative, it's actually a relatively simple thing to work out, because even if the party who retains the miles is going to split them, they can hold them in constructive trust, meaning they stay in their name. But when the other party wants to use them, they will book the flights for them using those miles. There's many different ways to approach this rather than arguing and calling the airlines to try and figure it out. The other thing I want you to sort of get out of this is the airlines don't care, right? People call them or call third parties. And in this particular case, it's the airlines, but it could be banks. It could be your mortgage creditors. It could be your credit card companies. It could be all different kinds of third parties who are involved financially in your marriage. They don't care about your divorce. They're not going to bend over backwards to come up with ways for you to figure these things out. It's really up to the two of you. And the sooner that we're able to look at these things rationally and reasonably and come up with a solution that effectuates what works best is the best way for everybody to do it. All right, next one, the good, and I put good in quotes here, people, good wine glasses. So in this particular case, the couple had gotten them from their wedding registry. The wife in that particular case claimed they were a gift from her college friend, so therefore they were her wine glasses. And he was an oenophile. He drank wine. He was big into wine, and he drank out of them more often. So he felt that since he used them more, they should go to him. This was further complicated when there was a move out and one of the glasses got broken, and they both accused the other one of sabotage, right? They went to mediation over this and ended up dividing them up. Each got 2 of the remaining glasses and a $1,200 mediation bill. So 2 wedding glasses each and a $1,200 mediation bill over the issue. So another fighting over pots and pans or glasses case that ends up costing you in the end. And the return on investment for that, I always talk about the return on investment. In fact, in one of the prior Susan Only episodes, the one on insider secrets, I talk about how it's very important when you start talking about doing discovery or doing your negotiations, conducting your negotiations, that you consider the return on investment for the time, effort, and money you put into arguing over something. All right. So the next one, and this one reminds me of another one that I had, so I'll sort of combine the two. The historical case, the case that I found out there in the press, was a pair of socks that had one spouse's face on them. It was a gag gift turned into a passive-aggressive trophy. The wife had gifted the socks to her husband with her face on them for Valentine's Day. And during the divorce, she demanded those socks back. He wore them to mediation. Right? Talk about passive aggressive. Now, this reminds me of one of my cases that was very similar. In the sock case, they settled after she let him have the socks as long as he agreed not to wear them in public. So the level of petty there, I guess, has gone to a next level, but they had to actually put that into their divorce settlement. In my case, which was similar, it was actually Valentine's Day gift, same thing, but it was a stuffed singing frog that my client had created that sang a song in his voice when you squeezed the stuffed singing frog. And as a part of the divorce, just like the sock case, my client wanted that stuffed singing frog back. And the wife in that case could not locate the frog to return it. So we ended up having a hearing in front of a judge for half a day over the stuffed singing frog. Now, I want to tell you, one of the worst experiences for a divorce attorney is standing in a courtroom, speaking to a judge whose face is looking at you when they realize that you are there taking up their time in an argument over a stuffed singing frog. That judge was not happy. We ended up having a half-day hearing, as I said, that cost thousands of dollars. And in the end, the judge's decision was, if she finds the frog, she gives it back to him. If she doesn't give it back to him. That was the ruling. Thousands of dollars. Court time. And I can't tell you how much that escalated an already not very pleasant divorce into an even worse experience, I think, for both of them. Neither one of them felt very good about that hearing at the end of it, and they certainly didn't feel good about the bill. Next up, and this one becoming increasingly common as well as we live in this digital world that we live in, but was a case over a Netflix password and a shared Spotify account. So who gets, right? It becomes a question in divorces these days. Who gets the streaming services? In that case, the wife changed the Netflix password and he retaliated by removing her from the Spotify family plan. And their attorneys in that case actually had to step in and include language in their agreement that was negotiated and paid for by negotiation time around tech subscriptions and digital access. So in a modern divorce today, digital assets are assets. They matter. But the cost of establishing new accounts may be less than what you're going to pay your attorneys or your mediator or your professionals to negotiate and put into writing what your agreement is around these things. Now, the next one is definitely not crazy, but I did want to include it because it is, again, just like with the digital world that we live in, frozen embryos have become an increasingly common issue that is extremely emotional and is something that needs to be dealt with in a divorce case. These are deeply, as I said, emotional cases. In the case in the news, the couple had embryos that had been frozen during their fertility treatment, and after they divorced, the wife wanted to use them. The wife wanted to use them to create a pregnancy or pregnancies. The husband refused. And this case went to court, and the judge ruled in the favor of the husband's right not to be forced to become a biological parent. And I'm going to say again, this one is not funny, but it is critical to understand because increasingly these cases are coming out and there's no easy answer to them. But what I will say is that what is turning out to be dispositive in most of these cases is the contract that the couple signs with the facility that is storing the embryos, right? The frozen embryos. So those are usually a contract. There's usually an annual fee to maintaining those embryos. It can be pricey. The last case that I had with those, I think, was $1,500 a year to maintain those embryos. And there was a great deal of language in the contract over how those embryos could be used, accessed, disposed of. And the bottom line in the case I had was that it required the signature and permission of both parties to do anything with them. But the requirement was that they were both also on the hook to pay for it. So there was no easy answer there because one of them didn't want to use them anymore. They wanted them disposed of, ethically disposed of, but because they didn't want to continue to pay for them, nor did they want to use them. The other party wanted to continue to pay for them because they didn't feel it was right to dispose of them. That became a very difficult issue to resolve For the time being, they kicked the can down the road and agreed that they would be maintained at the sole cost and expense of the party who wanted to for a period of time, and then they would revisit the issue. So we'll wait and see. But they ended up spending a great deal of money to come up with that conclusion. It is a difficult issue. Okay, we're going to take a quick breather here because, yes, you really just heard about a full-blown negotiation over a shared Spotify account. Trust me, we're only halfway through the list of the craziest things couples have fought over in divorce. But up next, things are going to get a little more real. We're going to go from taxidermy battles to license plate wars, and I'll also dive into what's really driving all of this. Why we fight over stuff that doesn't seem to matter, and how you can make sure that you don't fall into the same emotional traps in your own divorce. So stick with me. There's more wild stories, but also some real life guidance to help you come out of your divorce with your sanity, your bank account, and your priorities intact. But first, a word from our sponsor. Let's take a little minute to talk about something special. If you follow me on Instagram, you all know how much I love my evil eye pendant. I love I have my bracelet. I have the pendant that goes around my neck. I wear evil eyes all the time. And so many of you have reached out asking where I got them. I'm thrilled to share with you all, drum roll please, that my favorite jewelry source, Yumi You Jewelry, is now a sponsor of Divorce and Beyond. For me, Yumi You Jewelry is more than just jewelry. The symbols are symbols of strength, individuality, and empowerment. And they handcraft each piece with love and care. And so they are designed to help women stand out and embrace our unique personalities. So whether it's an evil eye like I have chosen for protection, a hamsa for faith, or any other meaningful symbol, their pieces offer beauty and inspiration even during these tough times like divorce. So here's the best part. Yumi You is giving my listeners an exclusive discount if you use the code BEYOND, that's BEYOND, all caps, at checkout. You'll get 20% off your order. 20%. So if you're looking for a meaningful piece to keep you inspired or to protect you during this difficult time, visit divorcebeyond.com/YumiYu. That's YUMIYU. There will be a link in the show notes. And treat yourself or treat someone you love to something special. You deserve it. Now, let's get back to the second half of the show. Here's another one that we're going back to the extreme again, maybe a little bit of the, okay, I'm not sure that these were worth arguing over, but we have the case of the taxidermy animals, the stuffed critter case. In this particular case, the husband was an avid hunter. The wife found his mounted deer, his stuffed bobcat, etc., creepy, but during the divorce, she wanted them. Ultimately, I would say that appeared to be out of spite. But she did win custody of the animals, but then sold them at a garage sale. Did not get the value of what she spent to get those animals in a hearing. But it's a sign that when resentment is running the show, the outcome rarely serves either party. I don't know that either of them won in that case. She was out a great deal of money. He did not get his trophies or stuffed animals, literally stuffed animals. And then she just sold them at a garage sale. It's an ultimate level of petty, I suppose. Maybe she feels she won. I'm not sure that in the end that's worth the time, money, and just stress level and conflict level expense that goes into it. Next up, we have the argument over a personalized license plate. Yes. The personalized plate read, Love to Ski, LUV to SKI. And it had been the wife's idea to come up with that license plate, but the plate was registered in the husband's name. Post-divorce, wife wanted it. He refused to give it. The fight escalated until she managed to get Love to Ski 2 and the court ordered him to pay for her license plate. So even vanity plates can hold value in a split. That value may be legal, may be emotional, may be petty value, but it ended up being a determining factor in that particular divorce. And now they're both driving around with Love to Ski on their license plates, still combined post-marriage. Another one here is over an unopened wedding gift. So this is a wedding gift that was so important to the couple that they had actually never unwrapped it. They had received a crystal decanter from Aunt Carol, and when they split, they both wanted the crystal decanter, the crystal decanter that neither of them had ever unwrapped. And in this particular case, the judge split the difference, as judges love to do, and had them bring it into court and flip a coin over who got it. So here they were fighting over something that clearly wasn't missed in their daily life or used in their daily life. It was still in the wedding wrapping paper. But at the time of the end of the marriage, it was worth arguing over, to the point of having to go to court and have a judge determine that they were going to flip a coin over it. And let's talk about the coin flip and the taking it to court, because the last case I want to tell you about is probably the most famous case. It's the Beanie Baby divorce case. And for some of you, that may ring a bell. For some of you, this may be brand new, but if you follow the Divorce and Beyond Instagram account, go look there. I'm going to post the famous picture that was in all of the newspapers in 1999 because of this case. And as a divorce attorney, this is the story I would tell to people when they started to get petty over their stuff and get into arguing at a point where it was probably not a great ROI to argue about things, or where we suspected there was more emotional investment in an object, or it was the principle of the thing. How many times have I told you all, the principle of the thing is the most expensive phrase in divorce. But let's talk about the Beanie Baby case. Now, that case made headlines, as I said, back in 1999 in a Vegas courtroom, because that became the stage for an unusual property division that made the papers. We had a couple, Francis and Harold Mountain. They could not agree on how to split their collection of over 100 Beanie Babies. And so they were ordered by the judge in that case, Judge Hardcastle, to bring the entire Beanie Baby collection into court, every last one of them, and spread them out on the courtroom floor. And then they both got down on the floor and they took turns picking one Beanie Baby at a time until the Beanie Babies were divided amongst them. Two questions clients have always had, so I'll answer them. How did the judge decide who was the first one to pick? The judge had them flip a coin, right? So the coin flip became the way to decide who was going to get first choice. And then the next question always was, well, what was the first Beanie Baby selected? Just so you all know, it was Maple the Bear, notably the first one to go. So that case, as I said, it made headlines all around the country. The picture is evocative of the entire situation. So I do urge you to go take a look at the picture, because it really says it all, right? You have this couple crouched on a courtroom floor in front of their attorneys' tables, surrounded by piles of stuffed animals, little teeny stuffed animals. And it serves as just that prime example of how emotionally charged and at times somewhat absurd divorce proceedings can become when personal property is divided, right? So that's 11 cases. I guarantee you, ask your own attorney. They will have more. When you're at the courthouse and you need to fill some time, just ask attorneys in the hallway. If they're divorce attorneys, ask them. We all have numerous of these tales. I could go on for days about it. I could write books about it. But what I want to talk about is why we're talking about this, why I wanted to do an issue on this. And yes, there's a little entertainment value to this, but it's also understanding why these happen, because they happen over and over again. And that really comes down to that divorce is not just a legal dissolution of a relationship. It is an emotional journey. And because it is fraught with feelings of loss, betrayal, fear, uncertainty, those intense emotions often manifest themselves in your case over disputes over what seem like trivial items. In fact, so many of my clients have said, I cannot believe, a year later when I talk to them, if I do, that we spent so much time and money arguing over that. They seem trivial in the future, but I guarantee you in the moment, they feel like life and death. So let's talk about some of the common emotional triggers that lead to those conflicts. Number one, for sure, is rejection and abandonment, right? Divorce always has a component of rejection in it. I wanted to be married to you. I no longer want to be married to you. You are being rejected or you are rejecting the other person. And so the end of the marriage can evoke deep-seated fears of being unwanted or left behind, or the promise to be together not being kept, right? Leads individuals to cling to their possessions as symbols of their own worth or symbols of this better time, this time when things were happy. They become symbols of this past relationship that no longer exists. So rejection and abandonment, often a part of this. Another aspect of divorce that we see and we deal with is the loss of control. Divorce is a significant life change, which often makes individuals feel powerless for good reason. It takes a lot of power away from you, right? And so asserting ownership over specific items can feel like a semblance of control amid chaos. Right? It can make you feel like it's just, I've given up so much. I'm not giving up this one last thing. I'm getting the stuffed singing frog, right? Betrayal and breach of trust. A majority of cases, somebody has done something that they should not have done. Infidelity, broken promises, those litter the ground of divorces. And those intensify desires to win disputes by the other person. And those possessions become proxies for our deeper emotional wounds. The things become a way to heal us or to get back for that betrayal. When we feel that the divorce is leading to unfair treatment, I'm not getting what's fair, you're not being fair, perceptions of inequity during divorce often lead to a heightened sensitivity over asset division, right? Even when it's the little teeny assets, even when it is the dog's Halloween costumes. And that can prompt battles over those minor items because it's perceived as a symbol of being fair, of the fairness. And finally, insecurity and a lack of confidence. The upheaval of divorce shakes our self-esteem. And that somewhat maybe can go back to the rejection and feelings of abandonment, but it can cause us as individuals very truly to feel that we don't have confidence in ourselves, that our self-esteem is being shaken. And that can cause us to attach what I would call undue importance to our belongings as affirmations of who we are. Who we are. So an example would be those wine glasses. They weren't of particular value, but the husband in that particular case felt that, he was a wine person. This was part of his identity. And so the wine glasses became a part of that. And so all of those things, which are so very common and so very understandable during divorce, can lead to something that only will make your divorce worse, which is these conflicts and petty arguments over things that don't actually matter. They seem to matter in that moment. And I don't want to in any way say that those feelings aren't truly there in the moment, but we need to take that step back and take some actionable steps to avoid those petty disputes in your divorce, because I promise you don't want to a year from now look back and say, oh my God, I can't believe I spent thousands of dollars arguing over a stuffed singing frog. So first step is recognizing these emotional triggers, right? So listening to this episode is putting you on alert. I told you the stories, maybe they give you a little chuckle. Maybe they, brought the awareness to you of what this might look like, but it also will help you when these things start to roll up in your divorce to recognize the emotional triggers, because that is the first step to a more amicable divorce process. And here are some strategies to prevent some of these minor disagreements into escalating beyond that. So first step, try to maintain some perspective, right? Focus on that bigger picture, which is that future. What role this little thing that you're talking about, or this big thing, whatever it is, but how it plays into that picture of your future and the well-being, say, of your children or your future independence, rather than diving down into the trivial dispute of what you're actually talking about. Try to put it into that bigger perspective of how important this is in that future life. And this goes to what we've talked about in so many Divorce and Beyond episodes, is that you are moving into your beyond. One of your biggest gifts is that you get to recreate your beyond, your future, into something that truly suits you and your values. So as you're doing that, think about what you're arguing over, what you're attaching such importance to, and see if it actually is that important when you look at it from a high level and you look forward to your beyond. Next, do what you can to improve communication as you are working through these issues in the divorce. Try to engage in clear and respectful dialogue with your spouse using I statements. We talk about this in mediation cases, or working with your mediator to have productive conversations around these items so that you can express feelings, because that's what this is about. It's about your feelings and wanting to get them out, but not assigning the blame. That will help to reduce potential conflicts as you go forward. So being able to talk about the feelings that underlie these possessions. Well, I guess giving away these wine glasses is really feeling very personal to me, because I'm feeling a lot of loss around this. I've seen people able to express that in a mediation, and have seen that moment of vulnerability and honesty change the entire tone of the process. The next tip goes along with what I just said here, is utilize mediation. Several of the cases that I talked about here, and many of my own cases, not the one with the singing frog, but many of the cases that I would raise for people would be cases that came up in mediation. And using a neutral third-party mediator can help you have more constructive discussions. So I would say if you're facing having a hearing about possessions versus sitting down with a mediator and having a constructive conversation about dividing your possessions, I would 99.9% of the time suggest that you select a mediator, even if it's the only issue that you're going to bring to a mediator. But try to work through talking through and coming up with a reasonable understanding of how you're going to decide to divide your personal property. Next, set some boundaries around this. Limit your interactions with your ex-spouse to necessary discussions, even if those discussions or conversations tend to become contentious. So by setting the boundaries so that you're only talking about these items when you need to talk about them, you're only having these negotiations in a constructive setting such as mediation, can be really important, because the more you argue about the dog's Halloween costumes, the more you're going to double down and dig in those heels. And if you're doing that in an unproductive way, interacting with your spouse and arguing about these things, that just leads to everyone digging in even further. Another one is to get some professional support. And I've talked before about therapists and counselors. They can help you with some of the coping strategies to manage your emotional triggers, to aid in maintaining your composure during these negotiations. But I also want to say that your coach can help you with this too. Coaches, in a way that therapists can't, can really reality test with you. And reality testing goes to what I was talking about, putting things into perspective. How important is this really? So rather than having the discussion over how important the wine glasses are with your attorney, unless these are from Versailles and they're worth millions or thousands or whatever dollars or have a financial aspect to them, I don't know as an emotional matter, they have much to do with the legal. So maybe it's better to talk about them with your therapist or counselor. And finally, as with every aspect of divorce, this is another one where prioritizing your own self-care is critical. You need to engage in activities that promote your physical and mental well-being. And those are, all the ones we talk about today, but exercise, meditation, managing your hobbies, finding the things that nourish you and nurture you to help you deal with all those negative emotions is going to be a way where you don't get embroiled in these disputes. You don't get drawn into them because the emotional content isn't there the same way. And it's really easy to be vibrating at that, highly emotional level during a divorce. It is a very, very difficult time with a lot of triggers that are going to set you off on an ongoing basis. And if you are not taking care of yourself, that just doubles, triples, quadruples, and gets larger. And that's what will eventually lead you to arguing over the pots and pans. These stories, well, humorous, some of them, well, emotional, others of them, these stories serve a purpose to give you some awareness of one of the most common stumbling blocks in divorce, one of the things that unbelievably causes a huge amount of contention, cost, and time wasted, raises conflict, makes divorces much less amicable, which leads to a more difficult future and beyond. And so if you're aware of these things, if you see how these might play out in your own divorce, and you seek to use these strategies to avoid it playing out in your divorce, you can have a better divorce and not become the Beanie Baby headline of the 2020s or 2030s, right? So let's summarize the golden nuggets from today's episode. Number one, self-awareness is key when it comes to this. So you need to understand your emotional triggers because that can help you prevent unnecessary conflicts. Two, effective communication is key here because respectful dialogue will foster amicable resolutions. Three, professional guidance is a key here. It will save you time and money and keep you out of that courtroom arguing over these minute issues. So get that professional guidance, mediators, get the therapist to help you, get your coach to support you during the challenging time. And four, golden nugget number four, focus on what truly matters. Focus on your beyond. Prioritize the actual significant assets and your personal well-being and how those will play into your new future over trivial possessions. By acknowledging and addressing the emotional undercurrents in your divorce, you can navigate the process with greater clarity and peace. I promise you this will pave the way for a healthier post-divorce beyond. So there you have it, everybody. Top 10, 11 wildest things people have fought over in divorce. And it, runs the gamut from those doggy costumes to digital passwords to the stuffed singing frog. These stories highlight how the end of a marriage can lead to unexpected battles over the most peculiar possessions. And remember, while it's easy to get caught up in the minutiae, focusing on what truly matters to you, your values, can pave the way for a smoother separation. So join me next time for a special guest I have coming to join me. It's going to be a really interesting episode, a topic that we've never done before. And in a few more weeks, you'll have another Susan-only episode. Thanks for joining me today. Thank you for joining me today on the Divorce and Beyond podcast. I hope you found some information and inspiration to help you on this journey. Please join me every Monday at 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time for a new episode. And if you like the show, please take the time to subscribe and leave me a 5-star review on iTunes. You can also find more information on the website at divorceandbeyondpod.com, where you'll find links to the YouTube channel, transcripts of the episodes, and other bonus content. So I'll see you next week to help you move through your divorce and beyond.